There's a lot of people who don't get why it's called Good Friday. What's good about it? It's a story about a barbaric form of capital punishment. It's about an innocent man being put to death. Surely it should be called Bad Friday. So what is good about Good Friday? Well, God doesn't always see things in the way in which we see things. And God's story is about the great reversal. Things working out in ways that we would never see or never plan. And this is summed up in Philippians chapter 2, beginning to read at verse 5, and it reads, "This is how you should think among yourselves, with the mind that you have because you belong to the Messiah Jesus, who, though in God's form, did not regard his equality with God as something he ought to exploit. Instead, he emptied himself and received the form of a slave, being born in the likeness of humans. And then, having human appearance, he humbled himself and became obedient even to death. Yes, even the death of the cross. And so God has greatly exalted him, and to him in his favour has given the name which is over all names, that now, at the name of Jesus, every knee within heaven shall bow, on earth too and under the earth, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus, Messiah, is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." Jesus was rejected. Jesus was condemned. Jesus was tortured. Jesus was executed. It surely doesn't get any worse than this. But what does God do? God raised him up and exalted him. The darkness of Good Friday brings about the sunrise of Easter Sunday. This is how God works. This is the great reversal. We sometimes only see the darkness and the despair, but with God there is always hope, bright hope for tomorrow. We see the great reversal being worked out in the life of Jesus. Jesus became a vulnerable mortal who fell victim to a violent miscarriage of justice. But his apparent powerlessness is actually power used to serve others, rather than the power used to control others. In Mark chapter 10 verse 45 it says, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Love one not through control, not through coercion, not through forcing ideas and opinions on others. Love one through power, deferral, and through suffering. We see the great reversal being lived out in the life of Jesus. Luke 13 verse 30 says, "The last will be first, and the first will be last." Jesus lifted up the despised, the Samaritan, the tax collector, the children, the women, the poor. It's such a contrast, even by today's standards, where we are still exalting the rich and the famous, the power and the influential, putting them on the throne. The accounts of Jesus' love for the poor, the outcast, the lepers, the tax collectors are encouraging, because we modern people like to think that we care about justice, but it's a grave mistake to think that these biblical accounts are merely there to inspire us. They are written to convert us to Christ. All these little reversals point towards the great reversal, the death and the resurrection of the Son of God. Jesus was not lifted up on a throne, which is the way in which the world expects a king to be lifted up. Jesus was lifted up on a cross. This is the great reversal. Jesus came from heaven to earth that we might go from earth to heaven. Jesus was rich and became poor so that through his poverty we might become rich. Jesus became sin so that through his becoming sin we might become the righteousness of God in him. His curse is our blessing. That's the gospel. That's why it's Good Friday. God doesn't go about things in the way that we go about things. Just imagine bringing together some business and political consultants who have gone to the so-called best schools and have worked for the best companies and campaigns and whose clients have seen the most success. Bring them together and pose the question. I have a goal. My long-term goal is to be the most influential and famous person who's ever lived. Centuries from now, I want to have whole civilizations built on my teachings, and I want to be at the centre of the lives of hundreds of millions of people. What should I do to accomplish this? Could you imagine this group of business and political consultants? Could you imagine them saying, be born in obscurity, avoid ever getting involved in any of the powerful political or economical or academic networks, be tragically killed in your early 30s before you ever write a book? The best minds in the world would never bring an idea or buy into an idea like this. And yet, this is how Jesus did it. Jesus would have failed if he had followed their advice. Jesus didn't come and say, I'm strong and brilliant. Now pull yourself together and you can be like me. He came to live the life that you should have lived and die the death that you should have died so that you could be reconciled to God, forgiven and remade. In the view of the world, Jesus' death on the cross was a complete failure. And yet, what does the world know? Love has won. And we, if we are going to follow in his footsteps, we must take up our cross. We must give up our glory. We must humble ourselves like he did. The great reversal, the cross, has taught us that it's not about the love of power. It's about the power of love.